Stand clear.
100% Wild Podcast.
So for all you listeners,
Hello, and welcome to
definitely not your favorite outdoor podcast.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Drury Outdoors 100% Wild Podcast. We are powered by DeerCast. This is episode number 321, and I am Tim Chelsvik.
I'm Matt Drury, and as always, you can find us anywhere podcasts are listened to, but you could also watch it over on DeerCast or on the Drury Outdoors YouTube channel. So I don't know why you would want to see these two ugly mugs, but there's usually a reason why you would want to tune in and watch it sometimes versus just listening to it.
Sometimes it's nice just to put a face to the voice.
That's right. Well, Alan's shaking his head no.
Alan?
So, hey, one other thing I want to get to real quick. If you can, subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I know you have.
Oh, sorry,
the audience. Yeah, it helps us out. And, we don't ask for much, but if you can subscribe and share it with your friends, that helps spread the word.
Drop us a review.
That's right.
All those kind of things. Yeah.
All right. So what are we doing this week?
So we've got a special fan show this week.
It's been a while.
We pepper these in every now and again because it's cool. Like, we've got the Rack Pack on Facebook. It's fun to check in and visit with our audience. But this is a way that we can further get to know you guys.
That, and I was too busy to get any other guests, so this is our default.
Mostly that. No. So we love getting to interact with you all. We don't get to do it enough. The podcast is just one of probably 3 things that you and I do.
3,
maybe 4.
33.
Yeah.
What don't we do?
It's a lot, but getting to connect with you all in the Rack Pack is fun. Even more fun to get to visit on the show. So today we've got a longtime fan. We've got Captain Crazy's Nuts.
I call him Captain C Squared Crazy's Nuts. I'm not sure where I got that part from.
It's easier to do that. So Chris Johnson is joining us all the way from Florida today. How are you, man?
What's up, Chris?
Oh, doing pretty good, guys. Doing pretty good. Getting warm. Be ready to start planting. We're coming in a rainy season here, so I'm itching to get seed in the ground.
In the sand?
In the sand.
Yeah.
In the Sahara Desert. That's what it feels like. I'm growing on a beach.
So in the Rack Pack, Chris, he always, posts and adds kind of what he's doing down there for hunting, whether it's whitetails or turkey or planting, whatever. And it's always interesting to see that diversity versus what we're dealing, here in the Midwest, which is what we're accustomed to. So it's always neat to see that difference in styles and what he's dealing with and temperatures and hurricanes and
alligators, iguanas,
every other things.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
And if folks remember, I think we used his Real Wild clip back in the fall.
How could they remember? How could they forget?
He was out whitetail hunting, and you were in an elevated box blind, right? And
it was a muddy blind on top of an elevated pad I made. And they were only 10 feet from me, the 3 cubs they have now gotten a boot. Mama got pregnant again. So they get the boot. They were sub-adults this past fall, and now they're on their own. I have pictures of one of them still roaming around of those 3 cubs. But yeah, that's I don't know if it makes the news up by you guys, but here in Florida, they started showing up in downtown Orlando, and they're always young cubs, mostly males, that are getting pushed out of the area,
smoking.
Kind of like a dispersal, kind of like deer with bucks. They travel far and wide till they can find a territory. Unfortunately,
Disney World
is getting less and less.
Hey, mommy, look.
Magic Kingdom.
That's not animatronic.
Yeah, they're animal friendly over there.
It will disembowel you.
Yeah.
You don't want that.
Yeah. It's one got hit by a car, unfortunately, but it's pretty nuts this time of year around here. Got a lot more wildlife than most people suspect, not including all the reptilian friends that we have, the gators,
the
and
fact that
crocodiles in the saltwater, and plenty of venomous snakes too. I think we have about all of them. So that we have in the U.S.
That's good enough reason for me
turkey
not to hunt
hunting's
there.
very interesting.
Getting the heebie-jeebies.
He mentioned nuts. I didn't want to bring it up, but
Oh, he did it on purpose, for sure. Yeah. Captain Chris is probably the reason Matt and I are packing a couple extra pounds.
well, at least Matt.
in the fall, like we lose our edge a little bit because Chris also, like, you were a deep sea fishing guide for a lot of years, right?
Yeah, I've been in the fishing business for 39 years. I'm 53. I just turned it last week. So yeah, I was started when I was 12 up in New Jersey, and then moved to the Florida Keys in 2004. Started a business there, and then we left and moved up here because living at sea level during hurricane season is rather unpleasant.
Yeah.
Once you've been through a couple of Cat 3s and 4s, 17 years was enough.
You barely look a week over 52. I mean,
He's found the fountain of youth. Well, and you do what most everyone does when they leave the fishing, the angling industry, is you got into the nut industry.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, that's
Classic.
That's what she said.
It's one of the steps you see all the time. Absolutely.
Oh yeah, back in the old nut grind.
Yep. No, the whole nut thing started. I used to make the nuts at Christmas time.
But you don't say that.
It kind of went from there. And, I had so much spare time when you're running 300 trips a year in the Keys that I was like, what am I going to do with this extra 50 days? So we started making these nuts and decided that it was going to become our business, and moved up here. So now instead of being 6 feet above sea level, I'm 160 feet above sea level. Big difference.
Yeah,
I know it doesn't sound like much to you guys, but in Florida, that's a big deal.
we're like 900 around here.
Yeah, so here we are, and we sell wholesale. We sell. You'll be able to find us in stores and golf courses in New Hampshire and New Jersey, and here throughout Florida. We're expanding. So it's been a year and a half of just going at it with the business. And of course you guys have tried them, so
they're good, man. The
We
brittle, I basically just, he'll send a box of goodies to us, and I basically just commandeer all the brittle.
And you close your office door and no one sees you.
Like bags of
until the end
brittle.
of the day.
I was like, hey, Dad likes brittle. And never made it to Dad.
He would like so that's why Chris had to get Terry's address and send some down there
send it
specifically.
direct.
They didn't get
Believe it or not, we backed away from making the brittle. Although I'll make it for you guys, special if you want. But we
so
backed
good.
off of that because its shelf life around here, it just gets so hot that it literally starts melting.
That
So-
sounds even better, honestly.
You could drink the brittle? Where's this
It
at?
wouldn't be brittle anymore.
What would you call it?
No, it's just molten
Viscous?
sugar at that point.
Molten
That's why I like
sugar.
it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Diabetes and peanuts. Yes.
So
So I'm curious, like, having run so many offshore angling trips, you run into some weird people, I'm sure, and you're stuck.
Yeah.
Matt's pointing.
at you.
You're stuck with them on the boat. Like I went out on
I'm on a boat.
on a head boat walleye fishing trip out on Lake Erie out of Port Clinton years ago.
Brag about it.
And this guy, I'm pretty wealthy. I got to fish with 50 other people on this. It's like you're standing shoulder to shoulder, everyone's vertical jigging, hoping to snag a walleye in the anus. It's not great. but this guy like started to lose his mind. Like we're sitting there, we're motoring along out to the spot where we're gonna fish off a reef, and he starts saying like, "Hey, I see you looking at me." I look around and he's just like kind of looking at this row of people, and he starts having this like psychotic event, like the FBI or CIA was tailing him, and the first mate and the captain had to subdue him. And
Nice.
like
I've been there. Not on my own boat, but on party boats like that. Like you said, up in New Jersey, we used to work on them. And the nighttime bluefish trips, when we left the dock at 7:30 at night. So they came prepared, if you know what I mean. And they did some wacky stuff, like you said, and stuff like you're talking about. I've seen that.
I'd like to fish up there.
You'd like to
That's
go
my kind of
prepared?
fishing. I'll bring the Zebco.
I already got my I got the
I saw you're
404.
fishing with the Zebco. It's impressive. That's how I started when I was 5, man.
You just got zinged.
Hey, I don't care. Honestly, I haven't fished since. Maybe I'll get those Zebco back out for.
We used to fish in the Keys with little ice fishing rods and try to catch these 5-pound mangrove snappers at the docks. And we, there was some beer involved, but it was a lot of fun. And we always joked about it. We bring the little Barbie Zebcos and stuff like that to try and catch fish. We'd hook tarpon that are like 100 pounds. You want to see a real meltdown really fast, you do that. It's pretty funny. Good
Jeez.
stuff.
Well, I'm curious, like, what are some of the crazier stories of things you've had to do to clients out there to make sure they're safe?
Rephrase that.
Well,
Captain Crazy's nuts.
there's stuff I can talk about.
And stuff you can't.
It's a podcast. You can talk about anything.
Yeah, it was most commonly you'd see just stupid behavior that you wouldn't think of doing on land. But you're going to do it on the water because you're someplace different and think no one cares.
This is international waters.
It's hard to point out any specific one that's not so graphic that. Yeah.
Yikes.
We used to, fighting was a problem again with that nighttime stuff where people came, they were drinking all afternoon and decided to go blue fishing at night. I didn't deal with it so much in the Keys as I did up in New Jersey. Imagine that.
You want to punch me right now.
Yeah,
but you won't.
I've had strange stuff happen all over. It's hard to pinpoint just one. It really is. I mean, I could probably, if I sat down with somebody to ghostwrite for me, I could probably write a book on some of the stories. You see some really absurd stuff. Again, things you wouldn't think about doing on land, but hey, I'm on the water. Who cares, right? It's no big deal. Can't be a consequence. So
I'm like genuinely curious.
I mean, I will say this. I did have a guy while we were running to a spot just decide he was hot and jump over the side of the boat while we were doing 30 miles an hour.
In the middle
I did have that once.
Did you go back for him or just keep going?
He wanted to punch sharks in the head every time we landed one. There was that. It's things you would just a normal person wouldn't do on any given day, and I'm sure that person wouldn't have done that had they not been on a boat. Thinking what could go wrong here, kind of. It's that Darwin theory of
social selection.
Stupid.
Yeah. Huh.
Oh,
sounds like
I don't know.
Can we go shark punching?
Go on and on. Really, we could do an entire hour and a half of podcast just going on stupid things that people did.
Shark comes up.
Got him.
or now he has my forearm.
Yeah.
I've never caught a shark, but I've always been concerned. Like if you were to pick one up, it seems like they can just come back on themselves and
they can, and you have to be very careful. I did myself personally. Our charter business was called C Squared, Matt. That's why you got Captain C Squared. That's my.
I knew it came from somewhere.
Email.
You didn't make that up.
With C Squared charters, and I would do personally about 100 trips a year dedicated strictly to catch and release shark fishing. So we did it up very shallow. It was very crystal clear water. And when I say shallow, I'm talking 4 feet, 5 feet deep. And we'd have anywhere from 15 to 25 sharks in a slick, right up to where you could literally hand feed them alongside the boat.
Seems like a bad idea.
And, if you didn't mess with them, they want nothing to do with you. Matter of fact, I had a researcher. To give a perfect example, I had a research guy. His name is Dr. Austin Gallagher. You can see him on National Geographic and whatnot. Mm-hmm. And he was just he was getting his PhD at a University of Miami. So he had some grant money. He wanted to tag some lemon sharks and whatnot. So he came down and he wanted to film them in the water. And mind you, this is just about when GoPros started. I don't remember the year. I want to say it was like 2012. Uh-huh. And so there wasn't a lot of GoPro usage, but back then they had the housing and you put a video camera in it. Well, you had to get somebody in the water to operate the camera. So we have all these sharks and they're right at the back of the boat. Literally, you can hand feed them. And they're averaging about 6 feet long, so they're about 120 to 150 pounds a piece. But the 7 to 8 footers getting upwards of 200. And lemon sharks are relatively docile as far as sharks are concerned. So he decides he's going to slip into the water. He's the professional. He's the trained professional.
Okay.
So he slips in the water. As soon as he got in the water, every shark went back about 200 yards and stayed there. And just sat there and milled around and milled around. So we waited and waited and waited. We sat there probably for an hour, hour and a half, and those sharks wouldn't get any closer than 200 yards, despite the fact that I've got all kinds of fish carcasses and stuff right there. The water is completely chummed up. And again, this water's crystal clear.
This guy
so
must have really smelled bad.
Yeah,
day.
fish repellent.
As soon as he got out of the water, they came right back. They could smell him.
I was right.
They want nothing to do with you. They're fish eating primarily. Now, you start going up north, you start dealing with great whites that have got a taste for seals, things like that. You might run into some problems. Or like that guy that's currently out there in the kayak off Hawaii. I'm sure you've all seen that one.
I just watched that last night on NBC News.
Yeah, exactly. That guy, well, see, that's a tiger shark. And his kayak looks like a turtle. And that is the main prey species of a tiger shark. So they eat turtles all the time. You see that in the Keys quite a bit. You come on these dead sea turtles, and they've got these giant half-moon bites taken out of them from the tiger sharks. And usually the shark was nearby because they won't get far from the food until they're done eating it all. But they can't eat it all at once. So, sharks they're cool. They're neat to watch. They're fun to catch. And again, it was all a catch and release situation. So it was just more about the fun. But yeah, everybody's freaked out by them, but they shouldn't be, really. The people that get bit in Florida is like, I think number one for shark bites on the beaches. That water is usually kind of frothed up, a lot of sand and whatnot, silt up into the water, and the sharks can't see.
It's confusing.
It's not like they can just reach out, touch, and go, nope, that's someone's foot. To them, I think that's something to eat, and they got to try it with their mouth. And when they do, we all know what happens from that point forward. But 9 times out of 10, they're spitting that person right out because it doesn't taste right.
Thankfully, Missouri ranks number 47th on shark bites.
A lot of regret.
So we're good.
Got to watch out for them paddlefish.
I've seen some pretty big paddlefish in these rivers here locally. Thankfully, they're filter feeders. But they are a cousin to the shark.
Yes, they are.
So
they're
when you
roughly
get
the same age too.
When you catch a shark and you're reeling them in, do you pull them into the boat to get a picture,
No.
or you just
we
unhook
leave them
them
over
from
the side
there?
of the boat because I will tell you. So that guy, Dr. Austin Gallagher, we had to pull.
Was he
the
also
lemon
the
shark
fish
out the
punching
boat.
guy?
No.
Not the fish punching guy. That guy. I'm
I'm
telling
a
you.
doctor. Bring that shark to me.
I almost went home early because that guy had me so aggravated.
Yeah.
But the Dr. Austin Gallagher had to get these sharks. We were taking blood samples from them as well. So we had to pull these 6-footers into the boat. And we were only allowed to do that because we had a special permit. Lemon sharks are protected in the state of Florida. You're not allowed to lift them out of the water or anything.
I know.
So special permit, get them in the boat. And 3 of us, so he has 2 interns, me, and then he is, of course, taking the blood out by the tail. And then we get that shark back over the side. And let me tell you, they are solid muscle. You've never felt an animal that is quite so solid as they are. When they tense up.
What are you doing?
Yeah, well, then there's Matt.
That just touched his bicep. I don't
get
know
that.
why.
But
It's still moving
It's amazing how
after you
strong they
touch
are.
it.
And what you were talking about, Tim, where they can literally reach their tail because they're cartilage.
Yeah.
So all cartilage, there's no bones other than their backbone and their teeth. So they can swing their tail all the way over to their mouth. If they wanted to bite their own tail, they can. And that gets a little hairy. We found out that about 6.5 foot, 150 pounds, nothing bigger than that in a boat because they're very difficult to get back out. Getting them in wasn't so hard. It was the out part that was the problem.
Yeah.
I gave up on that after a while. I said, Matt, I told him, I said, Austin, that's no bigger than this.
Mhm.
So, but it's fun.
So let's transition over into whitetail hunting in Florida because it's way different than here in the Midwest. Not to mention like the heat and the other animals that you're having to work around, but just the patchwork quality of the rut zones, right?
Oh, the rut is crazy here. So coming from New Jersey, it was much like, I think our rut timing was about the same as you guys in Missouri. You know, it was your classic get into November, and you know, by November 2nd, 3rd, all hell was breaking loose. And you know, the deer run around chasing, and by Thanksgiving it was pretty much over. And then maybe you had a secondary rut around December 15th ish, somewhere in there, and then that was pretty much it. Here, I see scrapes open up in the end of August. You start seeing like chasing behavior beginning of October all the way into February. It's crazy. And so I see a peak at Halloween. That's when I see a lot of chasing, a lot of heavy rutting activity.
Yeah.
Then I'll see it again around Thanksgiving. Then I'll see it again around Christmas time. And sometimes, depending on how warm it was in the winter, like this past winter, I'll see it as far into January, mid-January, of like full-on chasing. And what's interesting is the size of the deer. So you'll see these big-bodied 4.5, 5.5, 6-year-old deer that, I mean, they're not as big as what you guys deal with in the Midwest. I don't think you'll ever see a deer down here that's 200 pounds on the hoof, but they'll get up in that 150-pound, 160-pound range. And, you know, but right next to it, you'll have a buck the same age, but because he was born in like July, he's smaller body size, even though he's the same age. It is crazy. And I mean, I think even the researchers around here are like, they scratch their heads, because if you go out in the Panhandle, so I'm like north of Orlando by a half an hour. So sure. I'm just north of Disney World, basically. And we have multiples because we have Osceola deer, just like the turkeys, kind of a little subspecies. Plus we have Virginia whitetails. Plus they have whitetails that came from Wisconsin that they stock. I guess you call it stocking.
That's a shocker
whatever.
For those deer.
Brought them down. So their rut pattern is different than the others. The Osceolas are usually like August. You know, you go down into the Everglades and the peak rut's in July. It's based on weather. It's all based around the weather and the weather patterns and rainy season. Rainy season's a big deal. You know, when the rains come, we get, I think they say it's over 70 to 75% of our rain comes from about now all the way until like September. And then, you know, hurricanes, of course, you know, where you get a foot of rain at a clip or more. So the fawn drop is timed so that the fawns are big enough to withstand a flood come August or September. So that's why the rut in South Florida is in July and August. Where up here, it's a little later because we have more elevation and you're not so much in the flooding. Yeah. But then it extends forever. And then you go out into the Panhandle and their rut's in January.
So when does your bow season open and close?
September, middle of September. I'll be honest, I don't even do the bow hunting here. It is so hot. And you're talking 90 plus every day. I don't even partake in it. We have a muzzleloader season that opens up for a couple of weeks right around Halloween, which is like the peak of the rut. So for this year, I think I'm going to get involved in that. And then we have the gun season, but the general gun season lasts from like the first Saturday in November all the way till the end of January. So it's a long time with general gun. Yeah. It's kind of a wacky season because they just can't really put their finger on breeding and whatnot. And they seem to breed forever. I mean, I've seen fawns as early as last month, but I've also seen spotted fawns in October around here. Strange.
It really would change the hunting dynamic because we know, like up here when it's pre-rut, you just keep your head on a swivel. You sit as long as you can because you just never know what's going to come running by you. That would be exhausting to have that like happen at potentially any point in your season.
Yeah, it's bizarre and it's not as intense. So like you'll see a day or two or three where there's some running around. Probably the most intense part of the rut is that Halloween time. I mean, that's like a peak rut time. That's not a pre-rut. Pre-rut would be beginning of the month. But these deer, again, I think, you know, because of the heat that they're dealing with, a lot of activity at night. But if you get a good cold front early, a good cold front in October, then you'll see that activity in the daylight and all day. Like my cameras will catch all this activity at night, chasing and whatnot. Mm-hmm. But then during the day, if we get a cold front, poof, I've got all this activity. But now get that cold front come in December or January. There are like a lot of Floridians around here that don't come out of their house when it gets real cold.
It's 60.
These deer are the same way. That's why you guys look forward to a good hard cold front. Not here. You need 2-3 days on the backside of that front for things to stabilize out and then begin to warm up. And then the deer start showing back up. Even when it gets cold, they hunker down and don't move.
Even here though, they'll if it's a shock, they won't move great. Like it can be too cold, too quick for them. So it's kind of similar in that degree. I'm sure the temperature difference is
it's relative.
Yeah. But it'll happen here too, just like that.
Yeah, any kind of major drop in temperature here. I mean, to see, a lot of people don't realize we do get below freezing. I mean, I had multiple 20-degree days here in the mornings, but by afternoon it's up 45, 50 degrees. Mm-hmm. That's when those deer would move, though, middle of the day. Mm-hmm. I had to relearn deer hunting because I spent all those years in the Keys. I think it was 17 years in the Keys. I left New Jersey, moved down there. I was out of the deer hunting world for all that time because all we did was concentrate on fishing. Obviously, there was no deer hunting in the Keys. But then when I got up here, even before I got up here, when we evacuated up here for Irma, guy that was one of my sponsors for our charter business, he has a koi business, and he's like, yeah, you can hunt on the property, whatever. So I've got like a 20-acre piece with about 5 huntable acres, but it butts up to a state forest. So I pull deer from there, hence the food plotting and whatnot. But, I had to relearn deer hunting because everything I knew in New Jersey made no sense here whatsoever. None.
Sure.
It was bizarre.
And, we talked about the patchwork nature of your ruts. And this is one of the features that we built into DeerCast that we probably don't talk enough about, but people can go in and change their peak estrus for their different locations in case they live in a spot where, well, maybe the average date that the app is set for doesn't quite reflect where you are.
So we did when we first created DeerCast and built the algorithm, we went state by state and tried to get general. In some states there would be multiple peak estrus dates that we would put in ahead of time. So it was kind of custom set for your area. But when we got to Florida, it was like, holy cow. There are several dates that we put in there based on some of the research we did, but it was so all over the board. That's definitely like for anybody hunting down there, you would want to go to your location. So where you would actually set your location, you can go in and change the peak estrus or even like customize your DeerCast prediction. It's all in the same spot for that location. So anyways, you would go in there and select the date picker and change it to whatever you wanted and save it. But I would definitely recommend that for anybody hunting down there because, we preset it, but it doesn't mean it was 100% accurate for your area because it was literally as like a mile down the road. It was different.
Very nuanced.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I changed mine to Halloween. Actually.
Oh, really?
That was one of the things because like you were talking, first introduced the app, I think I bought it right away because I was in the Keys still. So I was trying to gauge what I had going on up here versus, being that many miles away. I was 6.5 hours away from where I'm at now. And that was one of the first things I sort of figured out just by messing with it. I was like, oh, you can change the date. I didn't understand the significance at first because, again, I just started deer hunting again in 2017. So the last time I deer hunted was in New Jersey in 2003. So to say things changed a little bit was an understatement, but then to relearn how these deer work up here, like, so I've killed a couple and there's no fat on these deer. Sure. None. Zero. Their hair is so much thinner than what I dealt with in New Jersey. Sure. Like their winter coat looks like a summer coat that you got, or even like an early fall coat that you would see up there. So right away, I was like, okay, so there's some drastic differences here, despite the fact that it does get real cold. And like you said, the rut, forget it. If you look at the state of Florida map for rut zones, holy cow. I mean, again, when you look at South Florida and see July, you think it's a misprint, and it's not. I mean, they have a season opens up in the Everglades in July.
Oh, man.
So when you talked about how the I guess the spring season or the wet season is from now till, what'd you say, September?
September, yeah.
So when do you plant your food
more
plots?
in October, but yeah.
When do you plant your food plots, or how do you time that out?
So you got to wait for, obviously, rains. Now, our rains will come every day. You haven't, Florida's kind of unique, which if anybody, I'm sure there's plenty of you out there that's been to Florida, and everybody says, you know how you can time the rain? You can almost set your watch
Afternoon.
to the rain of when it's going to happen, especially those that have visited Disney World. As an example, by noontime, 1 o'clock, you can literally watch the sky go from a regular blue sky without a cloud in it to suddenly the clouds start building. And by 3 o'clock in the afternoon, it's torrentially downpouring and you get an inch of rain in 15 minutes. And then poof, it opens up again.
Nice and humid.
And it goes away. Well, that's a sea breeze coming from the Gulf and from the Atlantic and colliding over the center of Florida. And depending on which sea breeze is harsher than the other will dictate how far east or west on the peninsula your rains are going to happen. And so that sea breeze collision is just now getting going. So we're getting to a point of everyday rains somewhere. Now, it may not be on you, but somewhere. So our winters are typically pretty arid, amazingly. Again, I guess Florida's considered more subtropical than tropical. Same with the Florida Keys. Florida Keys hardly gets any rain at all because you don't have that collision. And it's a very dry place, and a lot of people are kind of shocked at that. It's not a rainforest atmosphere because there's not enough land to create the clouds and the storms. But up here, I have to wait. You know, the weather's perfect come March. I mean, my soil temperatures are in the 60s and all that, but you're not getting a drop of rain. You don't get anything. So if you plant and you got a little shower, maybe dropped 1/4 of an inch of rain, you may not get rain for 3 more weeks. That is the driest part of the season, is the early spring. That's the fire season down here. Mm-hmm. And, you know, your plants might sprout, but then they just shrivel up and die because you're trying to grow in sand. So that water just filters straight through. It's been a learning curve. I mean, I've been literally planting up here since 2018.
Just never stopped.
And I'm just now getting it to where I figured it out, to where I can actually get stuff to grow year round.
Yeah, Florida sounds delightful. You've got the hurricane season, you've got fire season,
snakes,
you got the arid season,
sharks.
You got snakes and sharks.
Spiders. The best is the spiders in the early fall. These big giant banana spiders. So I'm sure you've all walked through the woods and caught a spider web in the face.
Yep, orb
but
weavers.
imagine it with a spider as big as my hand, right square in the face. Golden orb weaver. You want a heart attack? That'll do it for you.
Yeah. So many creepy crawlies. Dang. Well, normally, Chris, on our fan shows, our guest has a question for us. So do you have a question for Matt and me?
Yeah. So, you know, I know it happened with me in the Keys. I was on television often enough. There were some TV shows that I did. So I would get kids would come up to me and want to talk to me, usually an inopportune time after hours, with my elbows resting on a hard surface with a cold beverage. But anyway, so what was the most memorable kid fan moment you ever had?
That's a good
Not
question.
an easy question.
Man.
Typically it's not like the only time that really happens for me is if I'm with Mark or Terry or Taylor.
Splash damage is what they call
that. Usually I'm taking the picture. Hey, can you take a picture?
Here's the phone.
Yeah. So that doesn't happen as much as, I mean, for them it does. Yeah, but for me, it would be more like just grown men, which is not really something you are excited
We
about.
don't have hot chicks as groupies, unfortunately.
Like the baseball game.
I know that feeling. My wife talks about that all the time. With my fan base was 12-year-old boys or 75-year-old men asking me fishing questions.
Yeah. So baseball game, like going to a Busch Stadium, high probability of encounters. I was just there. Was that last week, the Bass Pro thing, or the week before? I forget.
A couple weeks ago, yeah.
And so I went down there with my family, and we had a chance to go on the field beforehand to meet some of the players. And so anyways, I had 2 or 3 guys, stop me in that instance. And that's usually it. That or an airport, like the St. Louis airport, those would be the times. Mm-hmm. It's never a kid. It's not, unless it's with Mark, Terry, or Taylor.
Yeah. And the only recognition I ever get, like on the kids side, is when my daughter's friends find out that our show is on YouTube, because all they care about is YouTube fame.
Yeah, true.
And so the fact that we have a show on YouTube, like I'm automatically a YouTuber, and that makes me cool.
I guess, yes, I have encountered that with some of my son's friends, but really they don't care until like some of the people we've gotten to meet. That I get that hey, so why did you get to meet so-and-so? It's like, well, they're hunters and we do this, for a living. And then you're all of a sudden, it's like some of Cameron's friends, like they heard that I went hunting with Adam Wainwright, or they heard that, I get to meet Mike Trout a couple weeks ago. It's like that kind of thing. And all of a sudden now they care like, hey, Matt's here. Before they they could care less.
Status elevation.
That's right. So
Matt, tell me about people
that's the kids care.
I don't care about you.
Nobody else does.
Exactly. Yeah.
Do you guys do a lot of like seminars and whatnot, or not so much?
Not a lot. Mark and Terry used to do that a ton. And,
Right.
That's how they built the company and built Mad Calls back in the 90s. But, Mark would do seminars all the time, and Terry, would do quite a few as well. And in the last, I don't know, maybe 5 to 10 years, they've really had me. I mean, we get requests nonstop for those guys specifically, and they won't do them anymore. And it's not because they don't want to go and meet people and hear stories and all that. It's just more of they hunt, basically 9 months out of the year, and they're not with their families 9 months out of the year. They're with camera guys and farm managers and
extended family.
So in the off season, the last thing they want to do is go do more of that. And I think it took them a long time to kind of come to the point where they were comfortable saying no. Mm-hmm. And that's one thing.
They're pretty accommodating.
Yeah, and that's one thing you see a lot with if you read any kind of self-help type stuff, or people are always like, you got to get comfortable with saying no and not feel bad about it. Mm-hmm. And they're very comfortable saying no now.
They've learned that.
They have learned that, and so usually I'm the bearer of bad news, but it's one of those things, man. There's only so much time, and for those guys, they don't want to spend even more hours, away if they don't have to.
Well, one of my favorite things I get to do is go speak at like men's wild game dinners. That's fun because like there's a hunting connection. I get to talk about hunting and think about hunting a lot, but I get to talk about things that are also near and dear to my heart, like faith and just kind of leadership and things like that. It's a nice way to kind of blend all those worlds together and then meet people in a different setting. So I really like doing that. But yeah, and I don't know that seminars have they don't pack the same punch that they used to now that people can get so much information online and there are forums and DeerCast, and there's lots of different ways to access learning.
Mark talks about that a lot. It's like we could go do a seminar that has 80, 100 people, or you could go Facebook Live and instantly reach 1,000 people or 5,000 people or whatever the case may be. So it's almost how do you want to spend your time? And if you spend it wisely, you can still communicate. We're just communicating in much different ways now.
Mm-hmm. Yep, 100%.
I get that. Yeah. See, I used to do a lot of seminars, fishing seminars in the Keys with kids. That's why I was asking you about the kids encounters, because some of it could be pretty tough.
Oh yeah, you know, if you when we do the seminar, so we'll still do a few. It's usually for Bass Pro. It's usually like, hey, Johnny Morris requested you guys to go do this opening or that.
No saying no there.
Yeah, that you don't say no, and so we will do that kind of stuff. And the seminars, Mark and Terry are great at. Because we'll just do a Q&A more than a seminar. It's like, hey, what are the questions you guys have? How can we help and answer them? And so they're really good at getting people to open up a little bit, but it can be like pulling teeth sometimes. I mean, if nobody, if they're not asking questions, you really have to be on your game to get engaged and like get people opening up and pull it out of them. And hey, who raise your hand? Who's, harvested a deer with a bow, that kind of stuff. It's like you try to get them engaged with different almost gimmicks to get them warm the crowd up. And kids can be tough. So sometimes you'll get the kid that's like very outgoing and, isn't afraid to talk. But most kids, they're super shy, and you put them in a situation where they got to speak in front of a bunch of people, they're just not comfortable with that. Yeah. So
I don't like kids very much anyways. Well,
on that weird
Captain, can you knight Matt and I to become first mates, or is there some way of?
Sure.
Tim
I don't fish professionally anymore. So
Tim's got a Pirates patch right here he could wear. That should be the stipulation. If we're gonna go on the boat, he's got to wear that patch the whole time.
I'll lose my depth perception.
So we don't want to see what you had for breakfast.
I did get seasick out on Lake Michigan. There were rollers that we were walleye fishing, and you just can't get away from it. Like once you have it.
It's game over.
I've never been on a boat fishing before in my entire life.
Oh, we got to change that, man.
Uh-oh.
You got to go to the
Florida
Keys
trip.
Well, I mean, you made fun of me for having a Zebco.
I did, but hey,
that's my experience.
I started that as a kid. I'm not making fun.
I'm 42.
It's funny because I know guys that have done like intermarina sailfish tournaments with Zebco 404s to see how many sailfish they could land with a Zebco. So,
wow.
It takes some real talent to catch big fish on a Zebco.
Well, you could be like next level and not even know it.
That's right. Well, know what? I mean, you could be making fun of me and I wouldn't even know any better because I really wouldn't even care, honestly.
Just happy to be here.
That's the best part. It just rolls right off the back.
Got my hot dogs and my bobbers. I'm ready to roll.
Just here to have fun. I would like to. Dad told this story. He might have told this on the. Oh, you know what it was? We were okay. So we had this event just a couple weeks ago. It was a grand opening for Bass Pro Shops here in the St. Louis region at Sunset Hills. Beautiful facility, just absolute awesome Bass Pro. And Johnny asked us to come in. So Mark flew in just for a few hours, but Terry and I, it's not far from, it's like 10 minutes from where I live, and it's maybe 40 minutes from where Terry lives. So anyways, we were there, and Tim came in. Roland Martin was attending, and Kevin Van Dam was attending. They even had like Whitey Herzog, the St. Louis Cardinals manager from the 80s, was in there. And anyways, so after the event, we signed autographs for, a few hours, and the grand opening was awesome. Chris Jansen was there, and it was a big to do.
Yeah.
The lieutenant governor and
Sarah Parker Pauley,
the MDC
director of the MDC.
Yeah. So anyways, we had scheduled a dinner for afterwards. And whoever was sticking around, a lot of these guys were in and out, but for whoever was sticking around, we went to dinner. And so it was Tim, myself, Terry. It was Dustin from Bass Pro, one of the behind the scenes guys, and then Kevin Van Dam and Roland Martin. And
I was losing my mind.
It was, and we've been to Kevin a few times. He's always very accommodating, and he's a huge whitetail turkey guy,
big DeerCast user.
Yeah. So anyways, he's fun to be around, but I had met Roland a few times. I think there was that World Fishing Fair last year at Bass Pro had, it was like their 50th anniversary. We met him there, and Mark and Terry have known him for years. And to sit at that table, it was a round table. You know, we only got there probably 8:30 or 9 for dinner after everything was done. It was a nice steakhouse. And those guys, just to kind of be in their presence, and everybody was, you know, talking and having a good time, and the stories were flying. But Terry told the story that I think it was in the mid to late 90s, they used to hunt with this guy by the name of Rod Gillis, I think was his last name. Hot Rod is what they always called him. He was in Foghat.
He's a drummer, wasn't he?
No, I thought Dad said he was one of the founding members. I don't know that he was there the whole duration of the band's, you know.
You guys come and go.
Yeah, but anyway, so they used to hunt with him a lot, a whitetail hunt and all this. And he had invited them down to go fishing with them. I think he might have had a big like charter type boat or something like that. I don't know all the terminology and all that. But anyways, they went fishing, deep sea fishing, and Dad caught a slam or something like that. He didn't even know what it was.
He was perplexed by what he caught.
And they were like going nuts about what he caught. He's like, they're all like, oh my God, you got a slam. And he's like, okay, cool. Like,
what does that mean?
This is my background. Like, this is where I get it from. He's like, great, you know, but it was a big deal to everybody, you know, and I forget what you would probably know, Chris, what all's a slam?
Well, it depends on the species and where you are. Like, so in the Florida Keys, there was what they called a flat slam, which you would catch a tarpon, a bonefish, and a permit all in the same day.
I think he was in
it's kind of like it's very similar to like a turkey slam, or I guess people are doing a whitetail slam where they get all the subspecies.
I think he was was it Miami? Did you remember what he said where they were coming out of? I don't recall either.
It wasn't a trash can slam, was it?
A hagfish, a lamprey.
Yeah, the trash can slam is like a ladyfish, a jack crevalle, a catfish. There's saltwater catfish. That was and like a grunt.
No,
that is the trash can slam.
It wasn't that. It was a bigger deal.
No, I'm sure.
What's it? What would be one in the Gulf? Maybe it was on the other side.
Probably like a redfish, a sea trout.
That was it.
Snook.
That was it. That's what he did. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. That was a big deal in the Keys. We didn't do a lot of flats fishing. We had a couple of captains that did, but that whole slam thing is a big deal. It's very much like a turkey slam or anything like that. But the biggest difference is you're doing it all in one day. So there's actual tournaments that revolve around catching a slam.
That's cool.
Terry wandered into it.
You get points per fish, and if you can do the slam, it's a big deal.
You'd have had to hear like Roland telling stories. Roland was great to hear. You know, he is ate up with turkey hunting. He's still a guide, a fishing guide down there. Where was he?
The Headwaters.
The Headwaters. Yeah.
He used to be, on Lake Okeechobee in Clewiston. I used to see him in the Keys all the time because he came down for the tarpon run, which is like right now.
Yeah.
He was always there to tarpon fish. Matter of fact, his son, Scott, I got to be friendly with him down there at Bay of Honda State Park.
Okay.
They fish all the time. If you ever watch on TV and you see a fishing show with an old railroad trestle bridge in the back, that is Bay of Honda State Park. And it's one of the best tarpon spots probably in the world.
Wow.
And I guess where you
see them all the time.
Yeah, where he's at, it's a catch and release.
It's freshwater, it's large. It sounds like they manage for largemouth.
And he's like man, it sounds like they're just huge. Like 7-pounders or normal kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's probably a phosphate pit type of thing. I know I'm guessing because I don't know for sure, but there's a lot of old strip mine pits for phosphate. Everybody who's a food plotter knows what that number is. And there's mines all over South Florida because all of South Florida is nothing but limestone and phosphorus. And that's what if you drive down the Florida Turnpike, when you get down towards Miami and you look off, you're heading towards the Keys, let's say, and you look off to your right, you'll see these giant shovels that pull up these like one town heaping mounds of this white dirt, and it's phosphorus. And the phosphate pits are very fertile. Imagine that. And so the bass get huge. They get 10s and 12-pounders are common there. So
that's cool.
It sounds similar to what he's managing.
But anyhow, it was a fun night. It's one of those, it's one of the perks, where you got to do some of these events, and then you're with some of these guys that just the stories that just to sit there and listen to their stories. It's fun. Kevin basically took the entire dinner to tell his whitetail story of him and his sons, all three killed giants there. And he's in Michigan, and they have a couple 200 or 300 acres, I guess. And try to manage, and everybody in that area knows how hard that can be. And anyways, they all three killed, I guess was maybe opening day of gun season. And it was a day. Really cool story, fun story. And we got to listen to that.
He was taking me through all his DeerCast and where he's hunting and everything. And Terry was calling because he was needing help, like with directions on to get in. I was like, I gotta go out in the parking lot and meet Terry. He's like, well, just let me show you some waypoints here on my DeerCast. And it was crazy how eaten up Kevin was over deer hunting in general.
Yeah, he is. Nice guy.
Yep.
So,
yep. All right. Well, we should wrap things up. Captain, it's been an honor, buddy.
It's been a pleasure, guys.
It's nice to finally get a chat with you. We appreciate all the crazies nuts, Captain Crazies nuts you've sent our way. They are delicious.
It's possessive. It's not crazy nuts. It's crazy nuts.
Yeah, two totally different things. So we'll link up your Facebook page in the show notes if folks want to find you. And if folks are interested in auditioning to be a guest on the show, there's a link in the show notes. You can click and
be our guest.
That's right.
Hey, we're talking about Orlando Disney World at Fit.
100%.
Right.
I've never been. I've only heard stories. All right, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Stay tuned next week. It's episode 322.
What will that be? Stay tuned to find out. All right.
See ya.
Till next time. Peace out.
Take care.
DeerCast is now supercharged with maps. Get ahead of your game with killer new features like live Doppler radar, wind check out to 5 days, virtual rain gauges, GPS path tracking, and more. Plus, get our 14-day revolutionary DeerCast prediction and access to DeerCast Track. Prep, predict, and pursue with DeerCast.
We're adding new videos every week, so make sure to click that subscribe button and check out all of our amazing content. This episode of DoD TV was brought to you by Leupold.